Dalton, we're finally here. Our final preview. We've done 70 of these now for all of the Power 5 teams, and we're rounding it out with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. A banger to end on with them, man. They're a really good team right now and really improved in their second year ever so slightly under Marcus Freeman. They went 10-3 in 2023. They went 9-4 in 2022. The pressure is on, though, in year three for him to make the college football playoff. And there's certainly a lot of reasons to be optimistic with so many new pieces offensively, with Riley Leonard coming in, new offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, who comes in from LSU. LSU had the best offense in the country last year, so excited about that. But really, Dawn, the biggest reason for optimism has to be the absolutely stellar defense that Notre Dame still has.
For sure, Marcus Freeman's defense here, I think it's a top 3 unit in the country, and I wouldn't shock me if they finish the year number 1, honestly. You've just got playmakers at all 3 levels when you've got Howard Cross and Riley Mills in the middle up front. I love Jack Kaiser at linebacker. I think he's an absolute weapon. Guy at corner and Benjamin Morrison, who we think is going to be a first-round, potentially top 10 pick. Xavier Watts last season leading the nation in interceptions. This is a team with a defense that can win any game against any team as long as their offense – honestly, the goal for the offense should be about 24 to 27 points. It shouldn't take that much because I think this is a top 3 defense in college football, and I think it's a unit that could take them all the way to the college football playoff.
You mentioned all 5 guys you just mentioned right there, Dalton, were among the top 10 players in the country at their respective positions. So they have 5 guys on that defense who are top 10 players in the country. My number 6 D-line, my number 3 secondary in the country as well. And like I said, a really good linebacker unit headlined by Jack Kaiser too. So yeah, that defense is absolutely elite. The weakness, or really the question I should say, is on the offense. It's, will Riley Leonard, you can go into a little bit, will he take the next step as a passer? He's a really capable runner that we've seen in his career, but he's never had a 70 passing grade in a season. Kind of struggled with accuracy throughout his career as well. That'll need to change if Notre Dame's going to reach their ceiling, and also need to change if he's going to be the NFL prospect that so many people expect him to be. He's got to take the next step and become more accurate, I think, as a passer.
For sure. I think there's certainly an expansion to his game that needs to happen. And over the last 2 years, you mentioned it. The first thing is he's an athlete, right? He's a former basketball player, wanted to go to Duke and play football and basketball, and then it just became football. But 5th best rushing grade among all quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons at 87.2. His athleticism is a real problem for defenses. Over those last 2 years, 35 explosive runs, 45 forced missed tackles. And, I think in the passing game, what you see right now is he does 2 things. He operates the quick game well. He can take a one-step drop and make a quick decision. He's smart. He can see a pre-snap read on his first read. And he can see one-on-one matchups pretty well, right? 15 of his 20 big-time throws over the last two seasons were against single coverage. So those are the things he can do right. You mentioned it. Last year, his accuracy dropped off the cliff, man. It was a decent mark in 2022. It was one of the worst marks in the Power 5 last season when he did play, and then obviously the ankle injury suffered, ironically, against Notre Dame, caused a lot more problems with his accuracy and then shut him down for the year. But we just need to see more high end. I think we know Leonard can do the functional things. He can get the one-step game, the quick game going, right? But it's about making more high-level throws, right? And even just playing at a consistently higher level. Max, over the last 2 years, the only games where he had a 75 passing grade came against Northwestern and Lafayette, which is an FCS team. So he needs to just find it. He needs to be better as a passer. He comes in as kind of the anti-Sam Hartman, where Hartman was the pocket passer who could make throws downfield, but he didn't move at all. Now we've got an athlete who needs to get better at just making high-level throws. Riley Leonard's one of the biggest X factors in this playoff. Athletically, he's everything you want, but he just has to get better from the pocket, and it has to just, the quicker he gels with these receivers, and it's a lot of new guys, obviously. Everybody's new for him in a new situation. The quicker he gels with them, the quicker he can start making vertical throws, then the better Notre Dame will be on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Mitchell, one of the receivers coming in from FIU, really, really talented player. They actually did a really good job in the portal overall. Don, guy we even mentioned defensively, Rod Hurd coming in as well. Really good corner from Northwestern. I really like him too. But yeah, Chris Mitchell's a big one. But his biggest target is obviously going to be Mitchell Evans, who we think is the second best tight end in college football right now. Really was playing like one of the best tight ends in college football before suffering a torn ACL in the 8th game of the season for them. Before going down, he had 422 receiving yards. That was 4th among all tight ends in the country. 10 forced missed tackles. We're also only behind Brock Bowers among FBS tight ends as well. Really good at finding the soft spot in zone coverage, man. He's an above-average athlete, has made some unreal catches in his career. I think one of them was against Duke and Riley Leonard. One of them against Ohio State, a one-hander as well. I think he's the second best tight end that we have in college football right now, man, and I'm a huge, huge fan of him. And it's kind of fits that mold of Notre Dame tight ends, right? A Michael Mayer, kind of same kind of ish player that you see out of Mitchell Evans right now.
Big time threat up the seam, and I think he should be Riley Leonard's best friend. I'm glad you mentioned that he was our number 2 tight end, because they have another guy on defense who was the number 2 player at his position, and that's cornerback Ben Morrison. I'm going to be honest with you, Max. His technique in coverage is as good as any corner in the country, and he's got all of the ability next season to be a top 15, even top 10 pick in next year's draft. The only thing really to me that separates him from somebody like Michigan's Will Johnson is he does have to get a little better as a tackler and in run defense, a little more physical. But as far as a pure cover corner, Benjamin Morrison is as good as we have in college football right now. And you saw it, over the last 2 seasons, he saw 7 targets against Marvin Harrison Jr., and he forced 3 incompletions and only allowed 2 completions. Only the elite guys can get open against Ben Morrison. He is just on a team stacked with absolutely loaded, talented players. Morrison's the best one, and honestly could be a top 10 to 15 pick in next year's draft.
Dude, everyone is waxing poetic, and deservingly so, about Will Johnson, because he is a truly special talent at corner. You mentioned it, man. I think Ben Morrison is right behind him. I think Will Johnson takes any step back at all, Ben Morrison could become the best corner in the country pretty easily, because that coverage ability, he's more athletic than Will Johnson too, man. I'm with you, man. I think we could see 3 corners go in the top 10 of the draft in him, Will Johnson, and Travis Hunter. Maybe even Tacario Davis, too, with how freaky he is if he has a great year. But, yeah, it's an unbelievable cornerback class, and Ben Morrison is at the forefront of it because how elite he is. What's the bottom line for this team, Dalton, right now? Is this a team that we are expecting to make the college football playoff, or will it be a disappointment for Marcus Freeman in year 3 and they miss out?
I have not finalized my entire 12 yet, but I am putting Notre Dame in the college football playoff. I think they have a favorable schedule. You look at some of the games that in past years would have been tougher. When you talk about, they do host Florida State, they have to go to USC. At A&M, week 1 is a tough game too, right? Kyle Field's always interesting down there when you have to play down there. But I think this defense can carry them. As long as the offense does just enough, I think this defense can carry them to a top 12 spot. I really do. I think this is a top 3 defense in the country. I think at all 3 levels. You mentioned Rod Hurd. The one soft spot in their defense last year was covering in the slot. He's a really good slot corner coming over from Northwestern, so they may have plugged that deficiency as well. This defense, to me, is an elite. It's one of the elite units in college football. They are a serious problem, and it's not just like scheme and Freeman coming up with things and certain defenses get by with blitzing and fun stuff. They just have a boatload of talent. Honestly, they have as much talent as any defense in the country. Now they just need Leonard to get through. That first game is going to be really interesting against his former head coach Mike Elko too. They need Leonard to get through the early gelling process and the early bumps with these weapons, Chris Mitchell and Mitchell Evans and Bo Collins. And keep in mind, they lost both their starting tackles and their center as well. They're working with a relatively new offensive line. But if their offense just does enough, I really think this defense is going to carry them into the top 12 and into the playoff.
Dude, that first game is so interesting because not only I disagree with you on A&M a little bit. I kind of like A&M this year, but if there's any coach in the country who knows how to defend Riley Leonard, it's the guy who coached him up at Duke, Mike Elko, who's now the Texas A&M head coach. So Elko's a defensive guy too. Yeah, he knows exactly what to do against Riley Leonard. So that's why I'm a little worried about Notre Dame in that game, because it's like, man, Leonard going up against the guy who knows him best. It's like, that's a little worrying for Notre Dame, especially at Kyle Field as well. That's a really interesting game. But you look at the rest of the schedule, man. Yeah, they play teams like Louisville and Florida State and USC. I don't think any of those teams are better than Notre Dame, right? I think they could. There's a way for them to go 12-0. And ironically enough, Don, I keep mentioning this. If Notre Dame goes 12-0 and they are the most dominant team in the country and they're the number 1 team in every ranking, they can only be the number 5 seed in the college football playoff because you have to be a conference champion in order to get that first round bye and be a top 4 seed. So even if Notre Dame is 12-0 and the best team in the country, they won't be a top 4 team in the college football playoff no matter what. So that's a really interesting part of it too. And kind of spoil a future video we're going to do, Dalton. We have Notre Dame, I believe, as the 6th best team in the country right now, right, in our preseason ranking?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, you just mentioned some of those teams, but at this defense, I think you really have to be an elite, especially at quarterback. You got to be a big time offense to play against this defense. And I know Connor Wegman's got a lot of the preseason hype, but he also hasn't proven a whole lot against Notre Dame, like top level type competition yet. You mentioned those other teams, but I go Notre Dame's defense against Tyler Shuck, right? Against what is it? DJ Uiagalelei at Florida State, against Miller Moss, who could be really darn good. I like Miller Moss a lot, but we've only seen him for one start and a little bit of other action, right? You need to be elite on offense, or you're going to get dragged into the mud against this Notre Dame defense. That's what I'm looking for. Just as much as, and I know we're doing a preview later on with the game anyway, but just as much as Leonard against Elko, this defense against Connor Wegman is going to be a really fun battle that first week to find out how good both of them really are. But I think it's going to take a whole lot to score more than about 20, 21 points on this Notre Dame defense. It's going to take a big-time effort from their opposing quarterbacks.
For all the storylines, man, I know Georgia Clemson's a huge game, and I know we got some other big, LSU USC is a great game. That Notre Dame A&M game might be the most interesting game in week one. I'm so pumped for that. That's a night game as well. I'm so pumped for that game. And yeah, Connor Wegman coming off injury, man, and his first game is against that defense. It's like, oh boy, that's a tough start for Connor Wegman in his junior year. But I'm so excited to see what each of those guys can do in those games. So that's gonna be a really fun one. But so we got for our preview of Notre Dame and our final preview for the 2024 college football season. We have more videos coming out. Don't worry about that for our predictions and all that for the season. But this is our final team preview for 2024. We appreciate all you guys for watching, all 70 of them or however many you watched. Appreciate you guys. Hey, thanks for watching the PFF College Football Show. Before I let you go, though, we have an unbelievable deal for you guys right now. If you use the code CFB25, you get 25% off your PFF Plus annual subscription. We've got the 2024 College Football Preview Guide that you can find over at pff.com, featuring the best players in the country from all 70 Power 5 teams, plus 10 Group of 5 teams that have the best chance at making the college football playoff as well. You can also gain access to NCAA premium stats for historical games, teams, and player tracking dating all the way back to 2014, so the last decade or so of college football. All the stats you can hope for, you can find in PFF Premium as well. Also, you can be the GM of your favorite NFL team with our unbelievable mock draft simulator, where you can draft up to 7 rounds of players for your NFL team. And if you want to dominate your fantasy league, you can do that as well using the best fantasy tools on the planet. All of that and more with your PFF Plus annual subscription, which you can find for 25% off right now with the code you can find in the description. Or if you want to go to subscribe.pff.com and use the code CFB25 at checkout. Again, you get 25% off your PFF Plus subscription. This won't last forever, so make sure you take advantage of it right now.